All right, we're talking about how to retire early on this live stream. How to retire. How am I going to retire at 55? How can I retire at 60? What do I need to do if I want to retire early? We're going to talk about everything that encompasses retiring early today. I want to give you a full outline of what it looks like to retire early. I went back through most of my most recent videos over the last 6 months, and the ones that got the most traction, the ones that had the most interest were, how can I retire early? And so that's really what I want to talk about today, helping you get to retirement, helping you get through retirement, and protecting your ability to stay in retirement. So we're talking about how to retire early. And what is the first thing you need to be thinking about if you're wanting to retire early, or if you're doing retirement planning at 50, or you're doing retirement planning at 40? What's the first thing you need to be thinking about? Well, if you're going to go into retirement, how much retirement income do you need? I did a recent survey on the Your Financial EK channel, and I said, how much in retirement income do you need? And the number one answer was $70,000 annually. Now, obviously, that needs an inflation rate if we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But $70,000 was the number one answer that I got when it came to how much retirement income you are going to need. We're going to do a live financial EKG on this live stream here in just a little bit, where I'm going to walk through how we create a financial plan, so you'll be able to see what it looks like putting in $70,000 in income. Now, the average retirement income across the country is $55,000. So on my little survey of the people who are subscribed to my channel, 70,000 was what they needed in retirement income. But the average for the United States is right at 55,000. In the state of Florida, 55,000 is the actual number in how much retirement income you need. So if you're wanting to retire early, you need to understand how much retirement income am I going to need? And how you get there is creating a budget, especially if you're doing retirement planning at 50 or in your 50s. If you're thinking about retiring in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, understanding how much money is going out and how much money is coming in is the first step in the retirement planning process. And understanding, knowing that, okay, when's the mortgage going to be paid off? When is the kid's college going to be done? When are these expenses going to change or go away or go up? That needs to be understood before we step into retirement. I say this all the time on my channel. We may spend 6 months, a year, 2 years planning a large vacation, but we don't spend 45 minutes planning our retirement. So understanding how much retirement income you have coming in is the first factor, or understanding how much retirement income you need is the first factor if you're wanting to retire early. Hey, Herb, thanks for joining the live stream. Appreciate it. The second thing you want to think about if you're doing retirement planning on, I want to retire early. We just said we need to think about how much retirement income we need. The second thing we need to think about is, how long is this retirement income going to last? Because if you retire at 55 years old, you've essentially got 30 years of retirement. If you look at mortality tables today, men are living to about 84, women to about 86. And those are just going to keep getting extended out as healthcare continues to get better. We have, our diets have changed and things like that. So when we're thinking about retirement planning, and we're thinking about retirement income, and we're thinking, how long is this retirement income going to last? We really need to think, okay, if I retire at 56, like Herb just said on the chat, if I retire at 56, this might need to last me, right, 30 plus years or longer. Because the worst thing you want to do is get to 85. So my wife's grandma is 81. Like, you don't want to get to 85 and be like, oh man, I got to get a part-time job to make up the retirement income that I don't have anymore. If you want to work, that's great. If you want to, my wife's grandmother just retired from working part-time just a couple years ago, right before COVID hit. And so, she worked well into her late 70s. She enjoyed it, and that's what she wanted to do. So you've got to be thinking, okay, how much retirement income do I need? And how long will this retirement income last? Now, if you're retiring in your 50s, you've really got to think about, okay, I've got a bridge, right? If I retire at 55, when am I going to take Social Security? Because at 62, that's the first moment where you can actually start claiming Social Security. So from 55 to 62, what is that? 7 years? 7, 5, 7, 8 years, whatever. I don't know. On these live streams, I can't count half the time. But there's 7 years between age 55 to 62 before you start taking Social Security. If you decide to wait till 67 to take Social Security to get your full retirement age, 100% of your Social Security benefit, there's a 12-year time frame between age 55 and 67. And if you wait to 70, if you're an overachiever, I like to call you a broccoli eater, that's 15 years from age 55 to 70 before you get 124% of your Social Security benefit. And you have to look at it, especially in a year like this is 2022, and you think, okay, if I'm taking retirement income off of my retirement investments and the stock market is down 10, 15, 20, 25%, now I'm taking my retirement income off of a losing investment. So you really want to have a very clearly defined retirement income plan, especially if you're retiring early, understanding how much retirement income am I going to need and how long is this retirement income going to last. And like I said, I'm going to show you a financial EKG live here on the channel here in just a second. I'm going to walk you through how we do it. I'm going to use an example client on how we do a retirement income strategy so you can get a good idea of planning out your retirement income, whether you use me or you use some other software or use an Excel spreadsheet, whatever you use. That way you can have a good plan for your retirement income. Third thing you want to think about, if you're asking yourself, can I retire earlier? When am I going to retire? This is kind of part 3A and 3B. 3A would be taxes. What are my taxes going to be like when I retire? Because most people forget about taxes. They always think, all right, I'm going to retire and I'm going to take my income and I'm not going to have to worry about taxes. I just literally talked to a client, not one of my clients. This is a new person who called me and they said, oh my gosh, Drew, I got hit with a huge federal tax bill last year. And I said, well, did you withhold any taxes on your IRA when you were taking out money? And they said, no, my advisor didn't tell me to do that. I'm like, you got to do that. You've got to withhold tax. You've got to understand, what are my taxes going to be when I get into retirement? Hey, Herb, thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate that. Lunch on me. My 3 kids, I'll take them to McDonald's because you know what the cost of a Happy Meal is today? Oh my gosh, I think it's like $6 or something. So we get one Happy Meal, we'll split it between all of us. So we really appreciate that. The other thing you want to be thinking about too, if you're asking yourself, can I retire at 55? Can I retire early? Not just taxes, but what about penalties? Because if you're under the age of 59 and a half, and we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies here, but if you're under the age of 59 and a half and you have an IRA and you pull out money out of that and you don't understand a 72T or substantially equal periodic payments or maybe 72Q, you don't understand those rules, you're not only going to pay taxes, but you're going to pay a 10% penalty on the withdrawal of the money that you take out. If you have a 401k and you're under the age of 59 and a half, you do the same thing. Maybe you have old 401ks. You start using that to live off of. Not only are you going to pay taxes, but you're going to pay a penalty. So how do you avoid those penalties? And I talk a lot about this on this channel. If you're new to this channel, you're new to your financial EKG, go back to the videos. You're going to see a lot of the stuff we talk about. But the first one is, especially if you have a 401k, you have what they call the rule of 55. And I actually wanted to show the rule of 55 to you guys on the IRS's website so that you know that we're not just making stuff up here in financial planning land. So I want to pull this for you so you can see. Let's see right here. All right. So this is the IRS's website, and this is where it talks about the rule of 55. So as you can see, distributions made to you after you separated from service with your employer, if the separation occurred in or after the year you reached age 55, or distribution made from a qualified governmental benefit plan as defined in Section 414D, if you were a qualified public service employee, that's federal or state or local, who separated from service in or after the year you reach the age of 50. So basically what that's saying is if you have a current 401k at your job and you decide, and you're the year you turn 55, or you are retiring at 55, 56, 57, 58, and you leave that job, you retire, you're terminated, you're let go, whatever, you can use your current 401k for retirement income without paying the 10% penalty. Now, you still will pay taxes, right? You're still going to pay taxes. So you take $1,000 out, you might pay $100 in taxes or $200 in taxes, but you're not going to pay the penalty. If you're a government, federal, state, or local worker, you have the ability to do that at age 50. Okay. Now, what this doesn't include is all of the old 401ks. So if you have old 401ks at other jobs and you've left them in 401k, you can't go to those 401ks and use those for income. Remember what? Let me go back to it. So I want you to see it from the IRS's mouth, not my mouth. Where's it at here? I just lost it. Oh, come back. Here it is. Look at this. Just distributions made to you after you separated service with your employer after you age. Where's it at? Where am I at? Come on. Just running all to pay. It's your current 401k. And for some reason, I can't find it here on the IRS's website, but it's your current 401k. So you want to make sure that you're not looking at your old 401ks, pulling those off and using that for retirement income. Because if you do that, you will pay the 10% penalty. The trick is, and I've had a lot of people comment that they're going to do this, especially when we talk about these videos. If you have old 401ks, ask your plan administrator at your current job. If you're thinking about retiring at 55, ask, or at 56, 57, 58, and you're going to need that 401k for retirement income, ask your current plan administrator if you can roll your old 401ks into your new 401k. Most of the time, they're not going to say no. So you're able to roll that old 401k into your new 401k. That's the rule of 55. So that's one thing that you can do with that. The other thing is a 72T. Now, a 72T really works well for individuals who have an IRA or have a substantial amount of money in their IRAs, their simple IRAs, their SEP IRAs. Usually these are like small business owners or people who did not have 401ks offered to them at their jobs. So you can actually you can actually take money out of your IRA with the Rule 72T without paying the 10% penalty. You're still going to pay the taxes, but you're not going to pay a penalty. And how a 72T works is you have to take substantially equal periodic payments from your IRA using 3 distribution schedules that the IRS outlines. And I'll show you these distribution schedules here and how this works. Let's see. I'm still learning the whole live stream thing, so be patient with me for a second. I'll stop that one. Share screen. There we go. Okay, so this is the IRS's website. So this is for 72Ts and how are payments determined under these 3 methods. Remember, this is if you have IRAs. So if you have the bulk of your money in IRAs, SEPs, or Simples, and you're retiring early, you're retiring at 55, and you're wanting to use that investment, those accounts for retirement income, you have 3 methods for taking out income from from that IRA. You have the required minimum distribution method, you have the fixed amortization method, and the fixed annuitization method. Now, the most popular are going to be the amortization and the annuitization method. Now, this is on the IRS's website, but this is actually showing an example from 2010 and 2011, which is a very old example. But current code says that you can take up to 5% safe harbor withdrawal off of your IRA for your substantially equal periodic payments with a 72T without incurring a penalty. So let me just explain what that means. If you've got $100,000 in your IRA, and that's the value on December 31st of the previous year, so that's how they're going to use to calculate the 5%. You can take 5% of that $100,000 in substantially equal periodic payments, and you will not face a 10% penalty. Now, with a 72T, you have to take those distributions for 5 years or age 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So you can't just do it like 1 or 2 years and be like, oh, I'm good, I made it to 59 and a half. No, it's 5 years or age 59 and a half. So if you retire at 58 and you want to do a 72T on your IRA, you've got to do it for 5 years. So age 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. You don't stop at 59 and a half. you got to do it for those 5 years. If you're 50 and you go, I'm going to do a 72T on my IRA, you've got to do it to age 59 and a half, right? 5 years or age 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So you're going to that age 59 and a half. So that's why it all kind of comes back to the first couple of points. If I'm wanting to retire early, how much retirement income am I going to need? And how long is this going to last? Because if you're retiring in your 50s, you're either going to have to use the rule of 55 or a 72T, especially if the bulk of your retirement investing accounts are in qualified retirement accounts, meaning 401k, 403b, TSP, IRA, Roth IRA, SEP, simple, whatever. So you've got to use those rules. Now, something that I have been preaching to my clients, especially over the last few years when it comes to retirement planning and retiring early, is creating what we call in the financial industry a freedom bucket. Basically a non-qualified, meaning a non-IRS, there's not a whole lot of rules account, but basically just a cash account, something that you can use for retirement income when you retire without having to tap your 401k, without having to tap your IRA. My most recent video on the channel, I encourage you to watch that. It's called Retiring Early at 49. I can't remember the exact title of it, but the most recent video, we talked about a gentleman who sold his house and he's using his home equity to live off of and hopefully get past 59 and a half, because most of his money, he's got about $1.8 million. All of that's really in IRA. It's all in IRA. And so we've got to get past 59 and a half so that we can use that money without paying the 10% penalty. And we're trying to avoid setting up the 72T for him. So he's using this bucket of non-qualified money, I mean, just cash asset from the sale of his home to live off of. Now, he's a unique case because he sold his house and he moved into an apartment and he's going to rent. He's got a very low cost of living. He's a single guy, so there's not a whole lot of expenses that are coming out. And so we're really trying to bridge that gap from 49 to 59 and a half so that we don't have to use a 72T on his money. So being able to invest in a freedom bucket, say, look at your budget. Is there a way that just because you're investing in your 401k or your IRA, that doesn't mean you don't have to invest in other accounts. I have people call me all the time and they go, well, Drew, I'm putting money in my 401k. That's all I need to do. I go, no. Do you have extra left over? I have a couple that I'm working with right now in Las Vegas. And we were kind of going through the financial EKG strategy, and they're doing a really good job. They're young. They're 39 years old, and they're putting money into their 401k and their 403bs and their Roth IRAs. And I said, well, when we get to retirement, they're wanting to retire at 55. So we're doing some planning. They're 39, trying to get them to 55 to retire. And I said, well, are you putting money into any other investments? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, why don't we start adding some money into a non-qualified account? Now, he had a Schwab trading account that he kind of messed around with where he was buying some stocks and things like that. I said, why not take some of this excess cash you have that you're adding to your savings account every month? And how about we add it to that Schwab account and you just keep buying, that S&P 500 ETF or the NASDAQ ETF or whatever you're buying, so that you're growing a bucket of money that you can get to anytime you want, a freedom bucket, right? So if you want to retire at 56 and you've got enough money in your freedom bucket to bridge you from 56 to 59 and a half, now you don't have to worry about a rule of 55, a 72T, taxes, penalties. You've got a bucket of money that you can draw from at any time you want. And then once you're done drawing from that bucket, doesn't mean you're draining it. But once you get into Social Security and using your investments for retirement, your IRAs and 401ks for retirement income, now you can let that freedom bucket build back up. You can even add to it. I've got many, many clients who are retired and taking income out of their accounts, but they're also putting money back in because they have a little bit of excess. And so you're able to kind of bridge that or build that freedom bucket back up so that, you go, hey, we want to go, I got a lot of clients who are doing the RV thing now. They're like, oh, we're going to take our RV across the country. We need 20 grand. Boom. We can send it to them out of their freedom bucket. No taxes, no penalties, just in their account, and they can go enjoy it. So building a freedom bucket is so, so very important when it comes to retiring early. So we've talked about retirement income. How much do we need? How long is it going to last? We've talked about taxes and penalties, rule of 55, 72T, freedom buckets, and then there's Social Security. Obviously, if we're retiring early, Social Security, understanding when you're going to take Social Security, that kind of goes back to how long is my retirement income going to last? When am I going to take it? What's my strategy for taking it if I have a spouse? really understanding dynamically Social Security. And I don't want to get into it too much today, but dynamically understanding, am I doing the best thing for myself with Social Security? Because sometimes, and I don't want to go down a rabbit trail, but when you go on YouTube, and I love YouTube, obviously YouTube's one of my main sources of gathering new clients, but you watch YouTube and a lot of people say, take Social Security at 67, take Social Security at 70, or you read something and it says, take Social Security at full retirement age or whatever. You know, I get a Barron's subscription, Barron's magazine. And anytime they talk about Social Security, take Social Security at 67, take Social Security at 70. Sometimes it doesn't always make sense. You know, Herb says he's going to take Social Security at 62, single with no kids. Well, that probably makes sense for him. So it might not make sense for you to delay Social Security at 67 or 70, especially if the market's losing money or there's a lot of volatility and you want to take on that annuity payment, which is Social Security, and let your retirement investments breathe a little bit, right? If you're taking income out of your retirement investments and they're going down 10, 15, 20%, maybe you need to take Social Security early. Let your retirement investments breathe a little bit, build back up, and then you can start taking more money out of your retirement investments as you get older. But now you've kicked in Social Security early to kind of give you a hedge. That's why it's really important to have that retirement income plan. I talk about this all the time. And again, I'm not trying to tell you this just because I want you to become a client of mine or whatever. You just want to have a plan so that you know, hey, if the market does this, if Social Security is here, we have a plan. I've had so many individuals call me and they said, Drew, we don't know what to do. And sometimes they're so far in, I can't sprinkle pixie dust over it and fix it. So it comes back to the planning. What's the plan? What are we gonna do? Hey, if you're enjoying this video as well, hit the like button. Make sure you smash that so other people will see it as well. And listen, if you want me to put together a financial EKG for you, go to my website, yourfinancialekg.com, fill out the information there. There's actually a free download there called the Roadmap to Retirement. It's all about retirement income. You can have it even if you don't want to meet with me. Go download that, read that. But there is a box that says, yes, I want to visit with Drew. And we can do that. Okay, so let's look at, I want to go to my retirement software, the Financial EKG, and I want to show you how we do this kind of live. And I'm going to use me as an example, not at 36 me, but I'm going to use 55-year-old me for a minute. So we're going to fast forward to 55-year-old Drew. And I want to show you what it looks like to do a financial EKG, and especially for retiring early. Now, again, this is not to get you to become a client of mine. This is to show you an EKG so you can, in your mind, start planning this out for yourself. But, you know, obviously, if you want me to help you out with that, would be happy to do that as well. All right. So this is what it's Retirement Analyzers, the program that I use for my financial EKG. This is one of the things that I use. Now, obviously, when we're doing Social Security, we're doing Social Security maximization schedules. When we're looking at your 401k, your IRA, we're doing investment analysis. This is strictly for taxes, retirement income, Social Security, making sure this is kind of the foundation of the plan. I always tell people this part of the financial EKG is the foundation, right? Jesus said the parable, any man who builds his house on the rock, when the storms of life come, his house will stand. So this is our rock. We want to know what's our retirement income, how long is it going to last, how much do we need, when are we going to take Social Security, what are our taxes going to look like, and based on market historical performances, how long is our money going to last? That's our rock. The everything else, the investment analysis, like what funds should we be in, what stocks should we hold, what portfolios, all that kind of stuff. That's like our walls and our roof, right? That's just kind of building out the rest of the house. But we want to have the rock first. And I live in Florida. Hurricanes come quite often. I think we have a disturbance in the Atlantic right now. We want to make sure that you have a foundation that your house is going to be able to stand on. So let's look at this. This is a retirement analyzer. And so what we're looking at here is, this is Drew Blackson. This is me. Can I retire at 55 with $1 million? So we're looking at this saying, okay, we're 55 years old, right? 55 years old, and we have $1 million in assets. How long is that going to last? So in this scenario, I'm going to take Social Security at 62, right? That's kind of that, like, don't do that, financial people, when you watch videos. But I'm going to take Social Security at 62, and we're going to assume it's $19.60 a month. Okay. That's kind of the average at Social Security age at 62 right now, 1960. If you look at assets, IRA money, $1 million. Okay. So I've got $1 million in my IRA. Obviously, there's probably some bank money in there and things like that. But we're just saying, hey, we got $1 million. We're 55 years old. How long is our retirement income going to last? Now, remember, we talked about expenses. The average expense in America is $55,000, $70,000 from my survey that I did. So let's use $70,000 first. That's what people want in retirement income. That comes to $5,833 a month. Now, we're going to give that an inflation rate of 3.24%. The reason we're going to do that is because the 108-year average for inflation right here is 3.24%. So from 1914, when they started collecting the CPI, to 2021, when we put a 7 on the board, probably going to put an 8 on the board in 2022. And you can see here, here's the big years of the 70s and 80s, right? So 3.24 is the average. That's what we're going to use. So then we go, okay, what about cash flows? Cash flow is going to be any kind of vacations that you're going to want to go on, any kind of, maybe if you have a daughter or son, you want to give them some money, whatever, cash flows. So let's look at retirement. First of all, how long is our money going to last? Well, in this scenario, retiring at 55, needing $70,000 a year, $1 million, it's only going to last to 72. So we look at this, when I'm sitting with a client, I look at this and I say, okay, now we need to make some adjustments, because at 55 with $1 million, based on inflation, see here, these net monthly expenses, they're growing with inflation. We got Social Security and we've got inflation. We still run out of money at 72 years old. Now, the house is not included in here. There's a lot of variables that we can put into this, but I strictly just want you to see how we're saying, okay, how long is our retirement income going to last? So we get to go back and we say, well, basically, if you're wanting to retire at 55 with $1 million, your amount needed today to avoid a shortfall, you need another $1 million. And I'll say, do you have an extra $1 million sitting around, Mr. Blackson, to add to the portfolio? Or your rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall, you need to make 10% a year to make sure you never run out of money. Oh, and I forgot to say, we're running this at 6% rate of return. Remember, the market's averaged 8% since 1950. That's the S&P 500. We're going to go 2% behind that to 6. So with a 6% rate of return, we're out at 72. And that's tough. That's a conversation that we have to talk about with clients and say, hey, how long is this going to last? Are there some adjustments that we need to make? I've had to talk to many clients about making adjustments and saying, hey, we probably need to change how much you're going to spend in retirement, or you need to work longer. I just had a conversation with some people this week. They're wanting to retire at 55. And I said, listen, if you retire at 55, in the current scenario, you're going to be out of money in your mid 70s. But if you work an extra 5 years to 60, then your money's going to last until your mid 90s, which they feel a lot better about that. Okay. So what do we need to do to make adjustments? The other thing we want to look at on this is we want to look at a market analysis, right? So if we look at historical rates of returns, again, here's the 6%, just 6% every year, we're out at 72. But what if the market does what it did from 2000 to 2010? Now this individual's out of money at 65. They retired at 55. They're out of money at 65. Why is that? Sequence of return risk, right? Sequence of return risk is basically you go to retire and the market is negative for multiple years in a row at the beginning of your retirement, which puts you off at a rough start to your retirement. So in this case, 2000, we're down 10%, 2001, down 13, 2002, down 23. It took 3 years before we had a positive market. And so that put a lot of people behind the 8 ball when it came to their retirement income. And so in this case, boom, we're out at 65. Well, what if we have, a 1964? That's when we had kind of that last high inflation, 64 to 82 was kind of when the Dow Jones never got above 1,000 points. What's it look like at that point? When do we run out of money? That point, we're out at 69 because we had a 15-year high inflation. We had World War II. We had all these workers or soldiers coming back. They became employed. They became workers. They had babies. We had all this demand for food and goods and energy and everything. And we kind of had this high inflationary environment for 15 years until Mr. Volcker came in and put the kibosh on it in the late 70s and 80s. And so this person would have been out of money at 69 in that scenario. So again, it's just things that we want to be looking at, not just saying, okay, how long is our retirement income going to last in the sense of a geometric rate of return? So a geometric rate of return is just saying, okay, I'm getting 6% a year every year for the rest of my life, because the market doesn't move like that, right? The market doesn't just go like this. I wish it did, right? I wish it was like that. The problem is the market is more like a roller coaster, right? It does do the, but then it goes, and you have all these like twists and turns, and it's crazy. And so we want to make sure that when we get into retirement, I'm all for the stock market. I am a huge stock market guy. I started as in finance. I started as a trader for a registered investment advisory firm. I was the guy that was taking your orders and placing them on the exchange, making sure you got the best price for your stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever you're buying. Love the stock market. But we have to understand, how is that going to affect our retirement income and our retirement income plan? Another thing we want to think about, especially in this case. Okay, so let's go to this case first. Drew's out at 72 with $1 million. So what does Drew need to do? Well, there's a couple things that Drew can do. The first thing, we're trying to get $70,000 a year, because that's what you guys said on your financial EKG. How much retirement income are you going to need when you retire? $70,000. I would say to Drew, hey, we need to either lower this number here, or you need to work longer. Like, you can't retire. So the first thing I'll say is, let's lower this monthly expenses. So let's go to 55,000, which is the average for the United States. 55,000 retirement income is what the national average is, all 50 states. Obviously, it's different if you live in New York, California, Florida, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. It's all different, right? If you're in South Dakota, North Dakota, whatever. So that's $4,500. So if we take this down to $4,500 a month, now we look at this, how long is our retirement income going to last? 83. We got 11 years out of it, because we shaved off about $1,000 a month from our retirement. It really, 70,000 to 55,000, that's $15,000 annually off of our expenses. But if you can't do that, if somebody says, well, Drew, I can't do that. I need $70,000 to live. I need $5,800 a month to live. I live in a high cost of living area. I've married, kids, whatever. I need $5,800 a month. Then we come back over here and I say, well, listen, here's what we got to do. You know, it's 2022. You're 55. What if we retired in 2027? We get you to 60. Now what's that do? Obviously, we go to retirement. Well, we're going to work a little bit longer. So we're going to do our monthly contribution. Now we're over age of 50. So we're going to add in our contribution now. So that's $583, because we're putting it into an IRA. And we need to work a little bit. Let's just say, I don't know, what's $50,000? What do you guys want to make? 50 grand? Let's say he makes 50 grand a year. So that's 4166. He's going to make $50,000 for the next 5 years. Now, how long do we last? Get to 85. Okay. So we've got it there. And look, we've lowered that rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall. Remember, the original rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall was 10. Now it's at 7.68. So we can look at this from a positive standpoint and say, hey, we're running this at 6% a year geometrically. You need 7.68. Okay. Well, if 7.68 is what we need for the rest of our life, and 6 is what we're getting, he only needs 1.6% more in rate of return to make this money last forever. So there's little things that we can do, to where we can get this, the adjustments that need to be made to make sure that this retirement income strategy works. And there are some situations where I'll say, hey, it just isn't going to work. It's just not going to work at this point. We've got to work longer. We've got to save more. We got to do something. In that scenario right there, just doing the $7,000 contribution to the $1 million and working to 60, making $50,000 a year doesn't work. There's got to be some other income. And obviously, guys, with scenarios that we're using, you've usually got rental properties. You've got maybe a spouse who's working. You have all multiple different assets. Again, what I'm showing you right now is just kind of a base case on how we would do this and how you need to be thinking about your retirement income. Brad asked this. He said, I didn't make it at 50, currently 59, will retire in the next year or two. Could have retired earlier, but we have a disabled adult child and want to make sure we can provide for him when we are gone. Brad, that is a great comment. Totally understand where you're coming from. And it's good. You made the adjustments that you need to make so that you can provide, for your special needs son. And that's a big deal. I've got clients that have that. I have family members who are dealing with the same situation that you're dealing with, Brad, and making sure that individual is taken care of, especially after you're gone, is so very important. And those are the kind of things that we want to be able to put into this plan. And that can be a cash flow. We can say, basically at a certain age, we're going to need this amount of money for the next 20 years to take care of our son, or we're going to need this money to take care of a parent, who's older. We're going to need this for long-term care, whatever. And all of that is what you want to have, especially when you're putting it into your retirement income plan. Okay. So, hey, listen, if you're enjoying this, make sure you hit that like button, smash that like button, and ask your questions. If you got questions about retiring early, if you have questions about wanting to retire at 50, I've marked out time to till noon today. So about another 20 minutes or so. So ask your questions. The other thing too, make sure you go to yourfinancialekg.com, get the roadmap to retirement, download that. It's a great booklet about retirement income. It's also the way you get in touch with me. You check the box that, yes, I want to talk to Drew, and we can do that. So let's talk about retirement investments. We're wanting to retire early. Let's talk about investments. Let's talk about the market. Let's talk about what do we need to do with our retirement investments, especially in retirement. So here's the question I ask people. How are you invested right now? So I'm 36. I'll be 37 in December 24th. So make sure you send me a birthday gift and a Christmas gift if you want. How are you invested right now? So I'm invested S&P 500, like VOO. I got some QQQ, little Apple stock in there, a little sprinkle of some other stocks. I'm trying to grow my money as much as possible, right? Well, when you get to 50, 55, and you're saying, hey, I want to retire in the next 1-2 years, it doesn't always make sense to stay invested the same way you were at 30 that you are at 55. But the problem that I run into when I see a client come into my office, and when I say into my office, we do everything virtually, is that the way they're invested today is the same way they were invested at 30 and at 40, and they've never made the adjustment. Now, there are things like target date funds out there that if you're in your 401k, you can make easy adjustments to your retirement investments. But if you're wanting to retire early, you need to have a more strategic plan than just saying, I'm trying to grow this as much as possible. Because once you start getting to your late 40s and early 50s, especially when you're 1 or 2 years out, I always use the example. If you've ever flown into Tampa, we live in Tampa Bay. If you've ever flown into Tampa and you're coming from like the Northeast, okay? Or if you're coming from the West, normally you fly over the Gulf when you're getting to Tampa. Our airport's kind of right there near the water. And as you're getting ready to land into our airport, you got to go over the Gulf of Mexico. And it's a beautiful, beautiful landing. You look out the window, you can see all these you see Tom Brady's house right there on the bay, right? You see all these beautiful homes right there on the bay. But right now it's the summer season. All right. So I'm recording this in August of 2022. And summers in Florida can be hectic because all of a sudden it could be sunny outside, but then boom, you have a thunderstorm, lightning storm, really. And because we're the lightning capital of the world, and it can cause airplanes to have a lot of volatility or a lot of turbulence as they're landing the plane. And so when you're retiring, when you start to see the runway for retirement, the last thing you want is some unexpected thunderstorm, turbulence, volatility to throw off your retirement. I talked to a gentleman just recently. He was in Texas, and he had most of his money invested in tech stocks or tech ETFs because what has worked the last 10 years? Technology. When I talked to him, he was down about 65% in his portfolio. And he was saying, I wanted to retire at 56, but now I can't do that because of the way I'm invested. And so you really have to say, okay, how am I invested right now? How do I want to be invested as I get closer to retirement? Brad just said, would like to live someplace warmer, currently in Northwest Ohio, and don't know how many more winters I can take. I feel you, Brad. My wife's family is up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we've been up there a few times in the winter. And I've told them, listen, if any of you die in the winter, I'll come visit you in the summer because it is cold and brutal up there. So yes, come to Florida. Leave Ohio, come to Florida. So retirement investments, we got to ask ourselves, how are we invested now and how do we want to be invested? You know, when you think about investing, you want to think about risk. How much risk do I want to take in retirement? Because when you're looking at your retirement investments, if you've got $1 million, and I like to use that as a round number because I can do the math easily in my head. If you got $1 million and the market falls 20%, that's 200 grand. The market falls 30%, that's 300,000. People say, well, you know, not always. You know, I've got this bomb in bonds, I'm in stock, I've got a nice 60-40 split on my portfolio. Well, if you're in a 60-40 portfolio right now, okay, August of 2022, you've had one of the worst years for the 60-40 portfolio split ever. And why is that? Interest rates have gone up, bond values have come down, and the market has gone down. And where are we at? We've been talking about this for decades, or at least a decade, saying, hey, interest rates are going to come up eventually. They're going to have to continue to rise, right? We might have some short-term blips where treasury rates come down like we're having right now, where treasury rates have come down a little bit, but rates are going to have to rise because inflation's still out there. And so you've really got to be careful in saying, okay, how am I being safe with my money, right? I'm trying to use bonds, I'm trying to use whatever, versus how much am I at risk? And again, that's something I don't want to necessarily get into specifically right now because it's individualized, but you really want to be asking yourself, how much risk am I taking? Target date funds. A lot of people use target date funds. And I actually have a video I want to do here soon. This is the Barron's article, Set It and Regret It, how target date funds go awry. And I've got my notes up here on from a video standpoint. You've got to be really careful with target date funds because how a target date fund works, especially in your 401k, based on the year you're going to retire. So you buy a fund based on the year you think you're going to retire. So it might be the Vanguard Retirement 2030 or 2040 or 2050 fund. And it's saying, okay, if it's 2022, I've got 8 years to retirement to a 2030. I've got, you know, however many years to a 2040 and however many years to a 2050. The problem is the target date funds just kind of automatically recalibrate themselves over time, like going from equities to fixed income. And what we've seen this year as interest rates have gone up, we've seen fixed income positions losing money, equity positions losing money. So individuals who are in short-term target date funds, Vanguard Retirement 2025, Vanguard Retirement 2020, or whatever, these short-term target date funds have lost money. Some of them have lost as much money as the S&P 500 because of the fixed income exposure. So you really, really want to be careful, especially, and again, I'm a professional. I like to say I'm a professional when it comes to investing, but you really want to talk to your plan administrator, a fiduciary, an investment professional, especially when you are getting close to retirement, maybe not to manage your portfolio, but at least to take a look at it and say, hey, this is what I would make an adjustment on because here are some things you might not be thinking about, right? Just like I talk to people about things that they might not think about, like Social Security spousal benefits or long-term care or taxes. I'm like, hey, do you know about this tax loophole that you can use, whatever? You want to talk to me about saying, hey, Drew, look at my 401k. Do you see anything that I am not aware of? What about these investments? Are you looking at what about the fees? What about the risk? Because especially, again, if you're getting close to retirement, how much volatility do you want on your investments when we get there? Okay. Mike asked the question, Drew, do you like I bonds? I think I bonds are great. I bonds are interest rate protected or interest rate bonds. The U.S. Treasury issues. You have to go to treasurydirect.gov to buy them. You can buy up to $10,000 per person. So if you're married, you can get $20,000, or if you have kids, put it in their name. It's a 12-month commitment. The interest rate changes every 6 months. So right now, I think the interest rate's like 10% on an I bond, and then it'll adjust itself at the 6-month period. And then you'll get it'll probably be high again because it's based on inflation, and inflation's high. So if you've got money sitting in your savings account that you're not going to use for 12 months or so, right? Get an I bond, go to treasurydirect.gov and buy one, buy two, whatever. I think they're great investments. So Mike, thank you for the question. Retire 2019. This is a softball. I like this question. Herb asked, do you work with retirees? Yes, I do work with retirees. I work with many individual, whether I've got clients. My youngest client is an 18-year-old who is serving in our U.S. Navy, all the way up to, I think 92 is my oldest client. So I work with all ranges of clients. Again, our goal in investing, we want to get to retirement, through retirement, protect your ability to stay in retirement. Fast Eddie says 9.62 for iBond. So an iBond is trading at 9.62 right now. Thanks, Eddie, for that explanation for me. So retirement investments, again, how much risk are we taking? You know, I like to use the rule of 100 and the rule of 120 when you're thinking about investing. So the rule of 120 says take your age, subtract it from 120. It's life expectancy. We're using a mortality table. And that's how much money you want to have in equities versus, it's supposed to be fixed income, but I would say more like stable value or safe, right? And again, if you're using fixed income, you just really want to be careful with it. We've been buying physical treasuries for clients instead of buying bond ETFs or bond mutual funds, because we want to make sure that we can get in and get out as we need to, or we want to own the physical, we want to get the bond at maturity and own it physically. But the rule of 100 says, or the rule of 120 says this. Let me pull up my whiteboard here. Come on, whiteboard. Okay. There we go. Okay. So what the rule of 120 says, it's really simple. You take your age. So let's say we're 120. Let's subtract out 60. Let's say our age is 60. Okay. Our mortality for the mortality table is 120. So that's 60. So what it's saying is 60% of our money should be safe or conservative, and 60% should be at risk. Okay. Now, as this number goes up, right, as you get older, this risk, the amount of money that you need in risk goes down. Okay. And as you get older, this number is going to go up because this one's going to go down, right? If it's 120 minus 70, it's 30%, right? So, or I'm sorry, it's 120 minus your age is 70, 70%. I just did this backwards. Boop, 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 boop. 70% safe, 30% is going to be a risk. So we want to make sure that we are having as much money safe as we possibly can. And we want to, let me stop this share here real quick. And what we want to do as well is we want to make sure that we balance out our retirement investments. Again, it goes back to the rock. It goes back to the retirement income plan. We got to know what rate of return we need for the rest of our life. If we only need a 6% rate of return, if we only need a 4% rate of return for the rest of our life, then why are we taking as much risk as we are? Okay, that's the simple answer to retirement investing. It's not hard, right? It's not, I like the 12 o'clock show on CNBC. I don't know what the halftime report or whatever. It's not, you don't need to be doing like put straddles and whatever. It's just based on how much money do I need to retire? How long is it going to last? And what rate of return do I need for that? Okay. So that's all I've got. If you guys have questions, I'll hang on here and I can jibber jabber for a long time. I got 10 minutes marked out on my calendar for this how to retire early. And then I got to go figure out lunch for 3 kids. And also my MacBook says my disk is full. So I got to figure that out as well. But let's see. Retired 2019. Drew, I currently rent, but worried about the increase in rental prices in the future. That's a big deal. Rent's rising faster than actually home mortgages. It's something that a lot of people are concerned about. In retirement, what we're seeing today, not just rental increases. We're seeing the cost of healthcare. Healthcare is something that is huge right now. And when you're talking about retiring early, if you retire in your 50s, a lot of times you're going to leave your healthcare at your job. And so if you retire at 55, you don't go on to Medicare until you're 65. So you've got 10 years where you've got to take healthcare off the exchange, right? The Affordable Health Care Act or healthcare.gov. And so from 55 to 65, your healthcare costs might be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $1,000 a month. And a lot of people don't think about that. They go, well, I'm going to retire and this is my budget. And they forget like, oh, my job is paying for my medical insurance, or my job's paying for my dental, my vision. And then as I go into retirement, oh crap, I got to pay for health insurance now. And so a lot of times we're looking at managing how do we stay under the Obamacare subsidy level so that our clients can get a subsidy, but also retire early? Or what form of income are we taking? Remember, if you go back to the first part of this live stream, if you're pulling money out of a freedom bucket, like a cash bucket of money that doesn't show up on your tax return, you can use that money to bridge the gap for you, as well as with Obamacare to keep you below the subsidy. Because you're pulling money out of your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, your SEP or Simple, that's going on your tax return as ordinary income. And that's pushing you above the subsidy level. But if you've got a freedom bucket, a non-qualified bucket of money that you can live off of, now you're able to keep that subsidy lower, so that you're not, your healthcare is not as expensive. So you really, really want to think about, that's a concern. Rental incomes, healthcares, other concerns that I'm seeing with retirees right now. I've got a lot of retirees whose kids have either moved back in or are struggling right now. Not necessarily to find a job, but they're just struggling in general with student loan debt and things like that. So teaching your kids good financial lessons at an early age is good, but also understanding when you get closer to retirement, it's a conversation I have to have with a lot of clients. I'll say, hey, listen, your retirement, you can't spend all your retirement money or your retirement income, on your kids. And again, I'm not there. I got 3 little kids there at home, and they all depend on me at home, right? I don't have any 20 or 30-year-olds yet. So I can't give you a good, it's kind of like someone giving you marriage advice who's not married. You're like, dude, shut up. You're not even married. But you really got to make sure you take care of yourself as well. And that might be working a little longer. That might be some hard love. I don't know what that is for you. Again, that's a good, topic for a counselor or a pastor if you're really dealing with that. But those are some of the main concerns that I'm seeing, especially for clients who are retiring early. Let me go through some of these comments real quick. Texas has been over 100 degrees for 58 days, almost 60 days. That's hot. Fast Eddie, that is hot. How are you guys going to play football in 100-degree heat? And the worst part, I'm a Kentucky fan, and we got to come to Texas in a couple years, right, to play you guys. How are we going to? I don't like that. But Florida's hot too. Florida is really hot, but the winters are really, really nice. Mike S., do you have any good retirement calculator recommendations? I really don't have any good retirement calculator recommendations. I mean, I use the program that I have, which works really well for me. If you just Google whatever you're looking for, I'm sure you can find it. Charles Schwab has a lot of good. Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade are custodians. Charles Schwab has a lot of good calculators out there for calculating RMDs and beneficiary IRAs, things like that. Anything you need. But if I'm doing the best calculator for me, boom, if I can see this is the HP 10B2 financial calculator. If you see my board videos, this is what I'm using for the most part, for all of that. So, let's see, what's the income range for a single? Okay. What's the income range for a single person to qualify for a health care subsidy? Well, let's look at that real quick, because I don't know the answer right off that. Healthcare subsidy income limits. Let's see. That means income of at least $12,000. How much can I earn and qualify for premium tax? Let's see what this says here. You got to at least make $12,000 is what this is saying. But that's not what I want. How much? Okay, what's the income? What's income level? Here we go, healthcare subsidies. Let's see, for premium study, eligible person. Okay, so anywhere between $12,000 for a single individual, from $12,880 to $51,520 to qualify for a tax credit. Family of 3, this is on the ACA's website, is saying $21,000 to $87,840. So depending on your individual situation, we would just need to look at. There's on healthcare's, on the ACA's website, healthcare.gov, you can type in your income and it'll give you the subsidy that you would get based on your income. Again, that's why we want to look at it from a tax return standpoint and say, okay, where's our retirement income coming from and how can we stay below those levels? Because you think about it, let me go back to that. Let's say that your income need is $50,000 a year, or let's use $70,000 a year. The income subsidy is $51,520. That's where that cuts off at. So we've got like $20,000 of income that we've got to get from some non-reportable source, not tax evasion, just non-reportable income, like your bank, something to where we can keep that income below the healthcare subsidy. Sometimes we can't, sometimes you can't. you can't you can't always keep it below. So you just got to do what you got to do there. But healthcare is a huge factor when it comes to your retirement. Other questions, concerns, retirement? I got 4 minutes. I'm going to hang on for 4 minutes. How to retire early, retirement planning at 50. I've got some really great videos out there. The Monday's video was retire at 49. I have a client working through retiring early at 49. Sold his house. We're actually going to use the equity in the house. He's going to go into an apartment. We're going to use the equity in the house to bridge him from 49 to 59. He's got $1.8 million in IRAs. We're going to grow that from 1.8 to 2.9 over a 10-year period. And then we're going to start using that 2.9 million to live off of. If it all works, if we don't have Armageddon, obviously, FBI raiding presidential houses and hurricanes and stuff like that. But, barring any of all that, at 59, at 60, we'll have $2.9 million to use for retirement income. On next Monday, make sure you hit the notifications button on the channel. I've got retirement planning at 50. What is the video for Monday? I don't even know. I got so much content. Let's see. 50. Let's see. What is it? Can I retire at 55? Oh, this is a good one. It's talking about ways to retire at 55, different things and strategies you can go there. Mike ask, how is the 49er Social Security impacted? I'm guessing 30% or less. It's not going to be impacted that much, to be honest with you. We run a strategy when we're doing the Social Security maximization. We can see basically how Social Security works. You have 30 years of working credits. They divide those out, to get the Social Security payment. We just take the years that he's not going to be working. We put zeros in there, and with COLAs and things like that, it's not as bad as expected. Again, the gentleman has a higher amount of retirement assets, $1.8 million in IRAs at 49. So we're able to do an earlier retirement, not necessarily worrying about Social Security as much, because we've got such a big bucket of retirement income or of money in retirement investing accounts. So again, it's something you've really got to manage. It's with this gentleman who's retiring at 49, and he is a client of mine. I physically, we do quarterly reviews. We've gone through, 50 different scenarios to get him to where he's at today. So this has been, and we change it every day. Fast Eddie asks, do you watch Rob Berger? He is on when you end. Listen, you only are supposed to watch me. Only me, not Rob Berger. No, I do like Rob. Rob does a great job. I watch the Money Guy show. Rob Berger does an amazing job. Oak Harvest does a great job. A lot of good financial channels. Just make sure if you're on YouTube and you're watching retirement channels, you're watching people that do money, check their credentials out. If they're living in a van, we used to say we're going to live in a van down by the river, the old Chris Farley joke, living in a van down by the river. Nowadays, people want to do that. But just make sure they have good credentials. A lot of things you see on YouTube, you got young people, a lot of people like me who are younger, and they've never been through bear markets. They've never been through market volatility. They don't understand managing client assets. And so just make sure you're really careful. But Rob Berger does an amazing job. Wise Money Show, great stuff on here. So, all right, guys, that's all I've got. Heritage Wealth Planning. I think that's the guy what's his name? Yes, I know you're talking about, retired 2019. Heritage Wealth Planning does a great job as well. So, all right, guys, hey, that's it for me. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. God bless.